Read the Bible. It's going to be amazing. Okay, I want to invite Brad Sundberg. Will you give him a hand? Come on.
I need that.
Use this? Okay. Let me tell you, this dude's my brother. We're not brothers, but he is my brother. I would die for this man.
Be your dad.
He could be my dad if he was. No, let's not get into that. That's not. It's 12 years, isn't it?
I think it's
13. This dude, whatever. This dude's like my best friend. I can tell you that everything that this man says today has gone to the Lord and been pruned and things like that. Like, he is somebody who goes to the Lord and says, Lord, I don't want to give people me. I want to give them you. I don't want to do anything out of my own intent. I want to give them you. And so it's going to be a really great message. Get ready, get your notes out. But Brad's incredible. He's on our board. He's a leader here. Let's go.
Love you, buddy. Let's go.
Love you.
Yes.
Great. Yeah, let's go.
That I feel like Jesus had dry skin during that communion. That thing like sucked the water out of my soul. I don't know if you can actually say that, but that thing, you had like a long-witted blood thing. So all that Jesus was getting a hold of me. Typically, when I speak, I haven't spoken a little bit. I don't even think I've spoken in this building. It was I think one of the last services that we had at our old building. I spoke, and I think they were out of town or whatever. But either way, I like to open up the sermon with quotes. I won't even call it a sermon. I like to open up the message with quotes that typically don't have anything to do with the message, but they're usually pretty good. You have those for me? You guys got to guess who this is. Go ahead, hit the next one. Ethan Bricker. All right, next one. Next one. Anybody? Any guesses? Next. Ethan Bricker. That's actually my favorite one, because what ends up happening is it's, you know, that groaning that the Bible talks about, the Holy Spirit, like you don't know what to say, the groanings come out. When Ethan gets so excited and there's something stirring in his spirit, that's what he does. He's like, because he doesn't know what to say. Okay, next. I'll say this today. You guys know where that comes from? Ethan? It's usually super fast. All right, this is a real one. I'm pretty sure that this is Carolyn Leaf. I'm not 100% sure. If you guys know, you can say it out loud. Next one. This is not Carolyn Leaf. The next one. The truth doesn't mind being questioned. A lie does. Let that one sink in. Yeah. All right, cool. So, anyways, let's get started. It's been kind of like a crazy roller coaster, because I started preparing a message that was on my heart a little bit ago when Ethan asked me to speak. I had it pretty much prepared, and then something kind of like interjected in it, and then the Lord started showing me something else, and it turned into something else. So it was just over this last week that the Lord's really been working, about a week and a half that the Lord's been working in my heart in this. And I believe it's for today, because it actually pairs with something that I had prophesied over somebody in this building. So I want to encourage, I think I'm getting a little bit of a hum. I don't know if I'm too close now. I want to encourage you guys to step out in the gifts. You can find the gifts in, I think it's like 1 Corinthians 12 or something like that. You can find the plethora of gifts that the Holy Spirit gives you. But I really want to encourage you to step out in those gifts and to start exercising the things that the Lord is doing in your life and that the Lord is showing you. I have absolutely no formal training in prophecy. I don't consider myself a prophet, but I see things. I see dead people. Do you guys remember that movie? You guys remember that movie? I was sick. Yeah. But honestly, like I see stuff, and it's through obedience. I don't even know if you consider that, but not dead people. But That was a joke. For those that haven't watched that movie back in the day, that was a joke. Let's clarify that. But through obedience, I have exercised that muscle to know when I should say something corporately and when I need to say it to the individual. So I have a couple things to share. First, I just want to say this. The gifts that God may give you, they may not be for the corporate body. They may be you might have something to pray over somebody you've never met before. But and it's strange because you're hearing something that you're just like, man, that's pretty specific. And if I go talk to this person, I get it wrong, I'm going to feel like an idiot. But I want to tell you that the Lord uses us in partnership with one another, in relationship, to show that he's listening, that he's watching, that he sees you. So that thing that you might be, that's unsettled in your spirit, and you're like, man, I need to go pray for this person. I want to encourage you to do it, because that might be the voice of the Lord when you go to that person and they hear what you have to say. That might be confirmation to what the Lord's been speaking in their life, right? So you guys remember Gigantor, properly named Dan, the guy that has to duck through doorways? Yeah. Do you guys remember what I said to him? Yeah, it was so weird because I just saw him, and he's a giant man, right? And I saw him standing before this humongous tree, and he was swinging with all of his might, and he had this huge axe. And that was it. And it seemed to me, it was so insignificant. I'm like, you really want me to go tell this guy he's a lumberjack? I mean, look at him. He looks like a lumberjack. But here's the thing. Here's what happened in that. I knew in my spirit, because of the stirring, because of the exercising that obedience muscle, I knew that I had to say something. And I also knew that it had to be said corporately. And I believe it was because of the rest of his family. Because if I would have said that just to him, it would have struck him, but it might not have gotten through his family and to the rest of us, right? So I said that. Again, seems insignificant, right? But it wasn't to him, because no joke, the night before, the Lord wanted him to know that he saw what he was doing, which was pretty much swinging at something and destroying it. And the Lord put the icing on the cake for him, and he followed up with, he's not tearing down to destroy, he's tearing down to build something beautiful. So what he might have thought he was being destructive, the Lord was like, Dan, Gigantor, I see you. I saw you in that, and I want you to know that you're about to build something beautiful with what you're doing. So I just want to encourage you guys. I'm not saying it's always coming up here and taking your microphone and sharing. It is corporate. That's corporate. It's going to one another in love and just being like, listen, I don't know. This is just what I'm feeling. I just want to share it with you. And you have no idea what that can do in somebody's life. So, again, it's been super weird. I typically don't dream. And when I do, I really don't remember. It's really choppy. And last night, I was just back and forth. I was up and I was down and I was up. And as soon as I'd wake up, whatever I was dreaming on, the Lord would just, I would just know in my spirit what it was. And I saw, it was weird. I was standing in the back of the sanctuary, and I didn't particularly see too many people or specific people, but I saw this cardboard. I knew it was an altar, but it was cardboard, and it was thick cardboard, and it was soaking wet. And I looked at it, and it just crumbled. You ever seen cardboard just collapse because it was so heavy with water? And I knew when I woke up, I knew that the Lord was saying that people are going to attempt to make this place an altar. That they're going to be so drawn to what's happening here that they're going to start building an altar based off of this place, based off of these people. And the Lord wants you to know it's not the place, it's not the people. We are road signs. That's all we are. We are road signs that's pointing to Jesus. We're telling you, hey, this is the direction we're going. You guys should follow. That's it. This building means nothing. Not that these people don't mean nothing. You guys understand what I'm saying, but we're here because we're pointing towards Jesus. All of this is about Jesus. Does that make sense? Okay, let's get weird. Hey, dude, in the hat in the back, Sorry, never met you. What's your name? Big guy. Yep, you in the corner. Jordan? George. Am I right? Okay, so I was standing in the back and I saw, have you guys seen the Avengers? Who's the guy? I know it's not the Hulk. Who's the guy with the wings? Okay, the Falcon. So it's super weird, but I saw you like the Falcon. You had like these metal wings or whatever, and you encompassed your family around the wings, like you kind of like shielded over them. And I heard the Lord say that He's protecting a giant slayer. And I looked at your little girl in the brown that has that love on her shirt, and I truly believe that she was born to slay giants. And the season that you're in right now is to protect your family, because she, not to say that your other kids don't have a call in their life, but there's something on that little girl that she's supposed to slay giants, bro. Yeah, that's powerful stuff, man. And then, so there's something that happens in your 40s. I don't know how many of you males are in your 40s, but something happens emotionally. So if I get emotional, feel it coming. So Alex is my daughter. I saw a music note, like you were a music note, and it was a music note that it didn't exist. Like it doesn't exist anywhere else. It was just that one music note. And the Lord was showing me that music note. You know, like you're driving down the road and you hear a song, you're like, oh my gosh, you turn it up and like something rings in your heart. So the Lord just showed me that you're that music note to Him, and like that there's no other tune that comes from anybody else that's like you. So okay, I'm gonna skip that. I'll wait on that since Ethan ate up a whole bunch of time. So anyways, I just want to encourage you guys, as far as like listening to the Lord and obedience and just stepping out in those gifts, because I'm telling you, man, it's this all of this is relationship. It's really about changing people's lives, man. That's why Jesus came. He gathered His 12, and it was about doing life with them. So that's what we're supposed to be doing together. We're supposed to be doing life together, living life together. That obedience muscle. I know I'm beating a dead horse. I'm almost done. This has nothing to do with my message. But that obedience muscle, why it's so important is because it's like any other muscle that you exercise. The more you exercise it, the stronger you'll grow. The more you'll be comfortable with what you're doing, right? Perfect example. Trey, say hi to everybody. That's my unofficial adopted son back there. So a couple of years ago, I would absolutely smoke this kid in basketball. Smoke him. I'd dunk on him on the lowered rims, but I would run past this kid, juke him, he'd be laying on the ground. Well, I stopped playing basketball, and he continued to play basketball. And it was, a couple days ago, it was like a day after Christmas, Elliot's birthday, they decided they were gonna get together, hey, let's play basketball. It wasn't fun at all. This kid just kept scoring and floating in the air like gravity didn't apply to him. It was so annoying. So I resorted to violence. But the problem with the violence is I tried kicking him, I tried pushing him, I'm pretty sure I tried biting him, but he was so fast I couldn't get my teeth around him. But the purpose, what I'm saying is, I stopped playing basketball. And the first time I jumped on the court, my knees hurt. This kid's floating in the air like gravity doesn't apply to him. And it's because he never stopped playing basketball. So that muscle, I'm telling you, if you go to somebody and you get it wrong, don't stop. Keep exercising that muscle, because you're going to start figuring out, okay, I was kind of iffy and I felt this way and I said this and it wasn't right. Or maybe it wasn't appropriate for the time. But you keep going back and you keep listening to what Holy Spirit's telling you. And I'm telling you, when it hits the mark, it hits the mark. You can change the direction of somebody's life by a word that the Lord speaks to you in your obedience, and you go to speak to them. It can change the direction of their life. You guys hearing me what I'm saying? So we're encouraging you guys, everybody, to just start stepping out in those gifts. Yeah? Okay. Do you guys remember what I said? Seth, right? Do you guys remember what I said to Seth? So Seth, when I first saw Seth, I saw his testimony coming out of his mouth. And it was on an angle. It was really weird. It was really hard to describe. But his words were they were alive. Like they were tangible. Like you could see them, you could touch them. And people around him were grabbing his testimony. And they were taking a hold of it, and it was actually growing inside of them because of him speaking. His testimony fed the rest of the people, if that makes sense, right? So today, that actually spun something. That's what today's message is about, is your testimony, the importance of your testimony. And everything changed because that Sunday that I obeyed the Lord and I spoke that, even though it was like, I mean, look at the guy. He looks intimidating. I'm like, dude, I don't want to call him out. Like, I don't want him to feel weird. Because I think, was that your first Sunday? Yeah. So I didn't want to make him feel like I'm like, hey, look at the guy with the tattoos. Super cool dude. But it was more like, dude, Lord, I'm going to do it. And then I don't know if that means anything to him. But what that ended up doing is it started turning something in my heart and pointing in a direction that the Lord wanted to speak to us about testimony. Because the next Monday, I'm sitting in the parking lot of the gym. So when my wife asked me if I went to the gym, I can say yes. But I'm praying at the gym, and the Lord, he highlighted Jim McKinney. Jim, I love your socks, bro. Your socks rock. Anyways, the Lord highlights Jim. And I just start praying for Jim. I'm praying for his body. I'm praying for his mind. And it was so cool. I really don't have a deep history with Jim. But Jim, believe it or not, even that little time that I spent with Jim, his life has impacted my life because of what he spoke into it. So I'm praying, and the Lord's highlighting stuff with Jim, and I start reminiscing about just the little bit of time that I spent with Jim. Jim is Ethan's grandfather. Lisa is Ethan's mom, and that's her dad. Does that make sense? Everybody tracking? Okay, I should have put tracking up there too, because that's another term that Ethan used. But anyways, now I lost track. Anyways, so Jim owns a farm, and I would go out to Jim's house, and I would go hunting, and I would come back, and Jim he'd be like in the barn, he'd be like tending to horses or something like that. Always busy, he's always doing something. And I would come from hunting, and I would have to go get my car, and Jim would be there. And literally, I'm not joking, 2 hours later of conversation, I would walk away, and I'd be driving in my car, worshiping the Lord. I'd be crying and so full of faith because of what that man would speak to me. He has so much history with the Lord. No matter what story, no matter what you bring into the conversation, he's got a testimony of the Lord's faithfulness. He would tell me, like, there's a time I would butcher the story if I tried to tell you it, but the premise of it is something was going on with taxes or whatever. He ended up in court, and they were trying to take like a whole bunch of money or land or something like that. And he's praying. He's not like trying to defend himself. He's just praying like, Lord, what should I do? He goes out, and the lawyer that's coming against him opens his mouth, and he can't speak a word. No words can come out of his mouth. Repeatedly, the judge says, if you don't have anything to say, we're closing this case or whatever it is. Again, I'm probably butchering the story, but you understand what I'm saying. That doesn't happen. I've never seen that happen before. So what I'm saying is those testimonies that Jim was telling me, it was building my faith. It was continuing to just build up like this where I feel like I could conquer the world when I'm listening to Jim's testimonies. Does that make sense? All right, so I'm not a scholar. I don't I've never had any formal training in the Bible or anything like that. But just through just a little bit of digging, looking at definitions, looking at the Word of God, I can see that it seems like there may be more, but there's a spoken and written testimony. Okay, can you put I think it's the testimony. Yep, next one. It's the definition. All right, here we go. This is the Webster's Dictionary or whatever of the definition of testimony. A formal written or spoken statement, especially one given in a court of law. So we even see it right there. A formal written or spoken statement, especially one given in the court of law, evidence or proof provided by the existence or appearance of something. So in Jim's case, what I was just describing to you, that would be that spoken testimony, right? I don't know if it's written in a book or something like that, if the family has something, but that was a verbal testimony that he was telling me. My mom, she pretty much has a can you open that for me? Photographic memory, which apparently is not hereditary, but she has a photographic memory. So I'm also praying for my mom, and I text her and I say, "Hey mom, I need a favor." And she's like, "How much money do you need?" I'm like, $200, but I also need you to write down any time in your life and my life that you've seen that it didn't make sense, that it didn't, basically she wasn't a Christian then, but she's a Christian now. Just look back in those moments that you couldn't figure out like what that was. Would you write it down for me? Would you write it down so that I can look, because I've heard the stories from my mom, and I know that there's now as a Christian, I can look back and I can be like, Jesus was working in my life before I even knew him. I'm telling you, I was in my mom's womb and she was in an abortion clinic ready to abort me. And I'm standing right here in front of you talking to you about Jesus. Tell me that's not the fingerprint of God. So I'm asking my mom, I'm saying, "Mom, I want you to write down any of these encounters that you believe that you had with the Lord, because what I want to do is when I'm facing a mountain, I want to be like, man, look at my history with the Lord. When it's in the hands of my children, like I should be doing the same thing, writing that down. So then when my kids, they're standing in front of this seemingly impossible mountain to climb, my kids can be like, no, conquering mountains is in my blood. Like I was made for this. And they just start climbing. That's our testimonies aren't just for us, they're for our children, so that they have, we talk about a lot, we talk about our floors being, our ceilings being our children's floor. That foundation is built off of our testimonies. Nate Thompson would not be the man that he is. He is, a lot of my message next week is about how that man's affected my life. That man, even though we're the same age, that man is a father figure to me. So I'm probably going to cry the whole next time I speak, but he would not be the man that he is without those two people right there, without his mom and dad. And it's the testimonies. He actually wrote a book called Between Sundays that you guys should read about the testimonies of the little things that they would do that impacted his life, that made such a big difference. And now that's a written testimony that not just he can share with his children, but he can share with all of us, that helps us, that builds our faith. I'm probably going to go on a whole bunch of rabbit trails, so you guys got to give me a second to keep coming back. All right, we'll just get right into the Bible. You guys know that there's a book in here called Esther? Yep, so did I last week. No, just kidding. It's a really good book. It's like an R-rated Hallmark movie. The Book of Esther. It's intense. And what I mean by intense, it's about a man's testimony that literally Ethan I think has spoke on this or referenced it before, Mordecai, about his testimony saving tens of thousands of people because a king remembered what Mordecai had done because he had a written testimony. So Ethan's a pastor. He would probably read you the story. I'm an amateur, so I'm just going to kind of narrate it. But I'm going to go back and forth between the notes because there's a lot of information. But what I want you to take from this is you have this plot, like you have this storyline that's kind of moving in a direction that a whole bunch of people are going to die. And then one man's actions that were recorded as a testimony, it changed the direction of history. One man's testimony that was written down changed the direction of history and saved tens of thousands of people, maybe hundreds of thousands, I don't know, because of the time frame. You can try to follow along. I'm probably just going to speed right through. So it's in the book of Esther, page 471. Just kidding. It's probably different in your Bible. But either way, you can just follow along if you want. But if not, you can just listen to what I'm saying. All right. So you have Esther. Okay, she's a Jewish queen who's married to a Persian king. Okay, and Mordecai is actually Esther's cousin, but Mordecai's aunt and uncle ended up passing away, so he took on Esther as his. So Mordecai's obviously Jewish as well. So Mordecai takes on Esther as his own daughter. He raises Esther as his own daughter. Then you have Mordecai, who loves this girl. She marries a Persian king, so obviously he's not Jewish, like it's a whatever type of marriage, and he's always looking out for her. So he sits outside of the king's courts just to catch glimpses of Esther passing by to make sure that Esther's okay. That's how much he loves her. And while he's in the king's courts, there's these two hoodlums in there that are actually the king's officials, and they're plotting to kill the king, okay? So Mordecai goes to Esther and says, hey, you should tell the king that these two dudes are plotting to kill you. And long story short, Esther ends up telling the king lives. They end up doing whatever they do in the Persian Empire to these two dudes. And then what the king says is, or actually it says in the Bible, that his actions are to be recorded in a book of Chronicles, which is not the book of Chronicles. This is like the Persian thing. But it was basically a book of memorable deeds, as it's called, I think, in Esther. So they're saying, write this, what he did, write this down. Okay, so put that in your pocket and hold on to that, because that's the whole point of what I'm about to say. So there's this pompous, arrogant official named Haman. And Haman, he's second to the king. So he's second in power to the king. Okay, this dude thinks that he's the man, and he wants everybody to know that he's the man. Because Mordecai is in the king's courts, and Haman thinks he's the man, when Haman walks past Mordecai, when he walks past anybody, Haman expects people to tremble in his presence because he's only second to the king. So he's one of those type of guys that wants people to know that he's the man, right? We've all seen those type of people. Well, old Morty ain't having it because he was a captive so when Nebuchadnezzar conquered Jerusalem, he took I think it was 22,000 Jewish captives with him, right? So I don't know what the time frame is because Nebuchadnezzar was then conquered by the Babylonian Empire. Correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, but shut up. So Nebuchadnezzar was conquered by the Persian Empire. The Persian Empire took over. So I don't know what that time frame is. So I'm sure that 22,000 grew, right, to a larger nation of people. But Mordecai was part of that captivity, right? So he came in. So he's probably seen a thing or two, right? So he sees this dude just waltzing through the courts, and he's not impressed. He's like, this is just a normal dude. It doesn't impress me. Well, Haman is now upset because Mordecai refused to tremble in his presence. So Haman, with all of his power, he goes to the king, and he tells the king, he's like, hey, I'll give you 10,000 talents, which is 250,000 pounds of silver to put in your treasury, which is $200 million our time. I don't know what it is there, but it's $200 million. He's like, I'm going to give you $200 million to put in your treasury if we can annihilate all of the Jews from our empire, whatever you want to call it. There was there's 200 provinces that the Persian Empire had control over. So he's like, hey, let's annihilate all of the Jews. So the king trusts this guy so much, doesn't question. He's like, here's my signet or my ring where they stamp it. And he's like, whatever you want to decree it, and it's in my name. So now this decree is sent out that all the Jews are going to die. All the Jewish people in that province, in all those provinces, are going to die. Okay? Mordecai, they get all the Jewish nations, all of the officials get these letters that the Jews are going to die on this certain day. Mordecai gets it, and he goes to Esther, and he tells Esther, he's like, hey, you got to do something about this. Like, you are in this place for such a time as this. You need to have a conversation with the king, because not only is he going to kill the Jews, he's going to come for you because you're Jewish. So Esther, she decides that she's going to hold a feast for the king, and she wants to set up Haman now. So she decides that she's going to set up a feast for the king, for Haman, and for herself to get together. And while they're at that first feast, the king says, hey, what do you want? You can have up to half of my kingdom. I'll do whatever you want. What do you want? And she's like, well, actually, let's have another feast. So my assumption is she's getting them buttered up. She's probably getting them drunk, getting them fat. And the next day is when she's actually going to drop the bomb, and she's going to explain what's going on. So Haman leaves the party because now he's like, I got invited to the kings and queens party, and nobody else came. So imagine like him, he's now puffed up even more. He's even more arrogant. Guess who he walks past? Mordecai, right? Old Morty's sitting on his little stump, watching for Esther, and he just turns and looks at him. I'm obviously ad-libbing or whatever you would want to call that. He looks at him, and he's not impressed again. And now Haman he's ticked beyond ticked. And he tells his family, like he's bragging about it to his family. He's like, yeah, nobody else got invited. It was just me. So he's all puffed up. And they're like, and he tells them about Mordecai. Mordecai wouldn't bow before me, wouldn't tremble. So he's like, you know what? Let's build a 75-foot tall wooden structure, and we'll hang Mordecai from it. So everybody knows that you tremble in my presence when I'm around. Okay? So this is Haman's idea. And what he's going to do is he's going to tell the king about this before the next feast. But the king, let me make sure I'm on track. Yep. So the king can't sleep. So apparently the weirdo next to his bedside, I don't know if this is a Persian thing, but there's a guy sitting next to his bedside. He's like, hey, dude, I can't sleep. Bring the book of memorable deeds to me. Remember what I talked about before about Mordecai being written in that book of memorable deeds? So that the weirdo, the creeper sitting next to his bed, reads him this account of Mordecai saving the king's life. And the king's like, hey, was Mordecai ever honored for doing that? Which he hadn't been. Right? So, fast forward to the next day. And you have three people that are going to this feast. Again, it's the queen, it's the king, and it's Haman, right? All three people have a different agenda coming into this feast. So, right before the feast, I'm assuming it's right before the feast, but Haman runs into the king, and he's like stoked that he's going to tell the king, hey, we're going to hang Mordecai because he wouldn't tremble in my presence, because he already got permission to kill all the Jews, right? So then the king, he gets to speak first, and the king throws it out there, and he's like, hey, what would you do if you delighted in somebody? Like, somebody delights me right now, and I really want to honor them. What would you do? And what do you think Haman's thinking? He's talking about me. So what does he do? He lays it on thick. He's like, cars and girls and crowns and jewels, and give me a Lambo, and I want all the Gucci clothes. He's not saying he's like saying, I want you to the point to where he's like, and when we're done, let's prance him around town and tell everybody that this guy's the man. The best part of the story is the king's like, that's a great idea. All that you just said, go do that for Mordecai. He's saying this to Haman, right? Okay. So now, let me make sure I'm on track. So now, instead of Mordecai being hung on the cross, he's got to be shown around town by the same guy that wanted to kill him. He's got to be shown around town like a show pony to all the people to be like, this is the guy that saved the king. The guy that wanted to kill him has to announce to all the people that this is the guy that saved the king. We need to honor him, right? So it's coming back full circle. So that his plan didn't pan out because of Mordecai's written testimony, right? All right, so they go to the feast. This is wrapping up. They go to the feast, and you have a Jewish queen, which, here's the thing. It's funny because it's a little bit of a curveball. Old Morty in his wisdom told Esther, hey, don't tell him that you're Jewish. So the king doesn't even know that his queen is Jewish, because he's got multiple queens, but this is his favorite one. So he doesn't even know that she's Jewish. When they go to the feast, she's like, hey, king, by the way, I'm Jewish. And Haman over here decided that he was not just going to kill me, but he was going to wipe out my entire family. He's going to kill all of the Jews. So now the king is ticked, and he's like, what? So then after an episode on the couch, yep, read it for yourself. I'm not going to go through it. But after an episode on the couch, these dudes throw a bag over Haman's head, and the very same 60 or 75-foot wooden structure that they were going to hang Mordecai from, they hang Haman from. All of this was on an account. Read it. It's in here. All of it was an account, or based on an account of Esther and Mordecai's faithfulness and his written testimony. Another point to this that I want to make is that testimony, that had nothing to do with the Lord's faithfulness. Nothing. That was Mordecai. It was a memorable deed. So this is where the Lord started working in my heart. Don't worry, we're landing the plane. Or how do you say it? Okay, I think it's okay, we're landing the plane. But that just completely sidetracked me. Sorry. Okay. So this is, hit the espresso button for me. So this is where it got interesting for me, because I was actually going to speak on legacy. And like impacting your life, impacting other people's lives. That's why I was going to speak about Nate. And it was funny because I was actually going to do a little blurb on the testimony and then finish with the legacy. But then the stirring in my heart happened, and I'm praying into this, and the Lord just started showing me how intertwined the two are. So then that's why I wanted to separate them. Can you throw up, I think I have the testimony and the legacy as a definition together. So this is it together, or is it just two separate ones? If it's two separate ones, it's not a big deal. No, come back. All right, so this is the testimony. So we already went over this. This is the written and spoken, right? Okay, so now go to the legacy. And try to see if you can, they're not side by side, but try to see if you can see what the difference is between the two. This is the legacy, the long-lasting impact of a particular event, actions, etc., that took place in the past or a person's life. Go back one more. And this is a formal written statement, one given in a court of law, especially in a court of law, evidence or proof provided by the existence or appearance of something. Okay, go back one more time. What do you guys see the difference is? Legacy is the impact of your testimony. Legacy is what leaves the impact, okay? So I had to write this down. You can tell this is 100% not me. This is from the Lord. My brain goes 2 layers deep, and then everything starts short-circuiting, right? This is about 4 layers deep, so I promise you that this is 100% the Lord. I had to reread it and reread it and reread it because of the depth of what it says. So if you can go to that next slide real quick. And I want you guys to really think about this. You can have a legacy without the Lord, but you can't have a testimony. So you can't have a testimony with the Lord that doesn't leave a legacy. A testimony is an anointed legacy. It points back to the why in your legacy. So one more time, you have to try to make this connection. I'm going to speak more on this sometime in January. I'm going to kind of give some clarification and some personal stories in this, but I really want you to see this because this is going to tie into it. You can have a legacy without the Lord. So it's not pointing towards the Lord, right? But you cannot have a testimony with the Lord that doesn't leave a legacy. A testimony is an anointed legacy. So you can't have a testimony that doesn't leave a legacy. Read, I think it's Proverbs 22:6. Write that down. You should probably take a picture of this. A testimony is an anointed legacy. It points to the why in your legacy. It's pointing back to the Lord, right? The Lord's faithfulness. Mordecai's testimony did not point towards the Lord's faithfulness, and look at how powerful it was. And I'm advocating that when the Lord is inside of your testimony, how much more powerful is that? And I'm going to read you some scriptures real quick, and then we'll wrap it up. All right. So we've seen the two types of testimonies, right? We've seen Jim McKinney's was a verbal testimony. You saw the power that it had in my life, just the emotional tie that it tied back. I'm sitting there. The Lord highlighted Jim for me to pray for him. And even, I would say that was probably 3 years ago that I was hunting out at Jim's property. And even 3 years ago, I felt the emotion of his testimony rise up in me, verbal testimony. And then we see an account of Mordecai, who was not pointing back towards the Lord, that his testimony saved tens of thousands of people's lives. Okay, so those are the two types of testimonies that we're going over. But do you know what else our spoken testimony does? This is the powerful part. This is the part that gets me excited. In Revelation 12, Revelation 12:11 says that, and they, who you think they is? We, that's us, have conquered him. Obviously, I have it in parentheses, so that's Satan, by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimonies. So in the beginning of Revelations 12, I think it talks about Satan was so ticked off when he was sent down to the earth that he tried attacking, he waged war. He was trying to attack Mary, which is the mother of Jesus, right? And it says, let me see if I can find it. It says that because he couldn't get to Mary, that he waged war against her offspring, and this is her offspring, which are the ones who keeps God's command and hold fast to their testimonies about Jesus. So it's the one who holds fast to the commands of God. So this is us. He's attacking us. Are you guys following with what I'm saying? He's coming after us, the ones that onto their testimonies about Jesus. Do you guys know that there's over I know it sounds like going down a rabbit trail. I'll tie it all up. Do you guys know that there's over 200 forms of dementia? And that one of them is Alzheimer's. I think I'm saying that right, but that's just one of them. In 2019 and 2020, there was a 145% increase in just Alzheimer's disease. That's not the other forms of dementia, right? Do you guys understand what that is, like dementia and all that? We're losing like the grasp of, what's happened in the past or whatever, which is directly attacking our testimony. The statistics show that 1 in 3 seniors will die with some sort of dementia when they pass. They'll have some sort of dementia. Every single year, over 10 million new cases of dementia are popping up. Every year, there's 10 million new cases. So think about this. If the two things that conquer the enemy are the blood of the Lamb, which we've already, this is clear, that door's been shut. The blood of the Lamb is not going to fail. It's already accomplished what it set out to accomplish, right? Like Ethan said, the blood is still warm. So it seems to me that what's failing here, what's being truly attacked, is the word of our testimony. It's the partnering of the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony that we conquer the enemy. But it just doesn't conquer the enemy. It conquers the enemies in your life. So when you're like, when Gigantor was going through that and the Lord said, hey, Dan, I saw you. I saw what you're going through. To me, that just took him going in this direction. He thinks he's destroying something because he's so angry. And it changes his footsteps going in a different direction. And guess who's with him? His family. That testimony, that speaking into somebody's life changes the direction of their life. You could change the direction of their life. But it's with the partner. Oh, man. We're getting new carpet, by the way. It's just water. Sorry. So it's when our testimonies partner again with the blood of the Lamb that it becomes powerful. But here's the thing. We can't just hold it in. And your testimony doesn't have to be grandiose. It doesn't have to be like this huge conversion. Like mom has stories of she couldn't even read English. And the Holy Spirit, she was so hungry for the word of God that she was so hungry that she picked up the word and said, Lord, I believe that you're going to teach me to read English. And she could read English. Those are the testimonies that need to be written down that we hear that build our faith. And even the small testimonies, the little ones, they're all significant because they are here to build up the congregation and they're here to conquer the enemy. But they have to be spoken. They have to be written down. We have to be portraying these things to people. We have to be saying these things. You have to step out and exercise those obedience muscles. So, in closing, I think it would just be appropriate if I have a testimony. It's not a huge testimony, but it doesn't need to be. But if anybody has a testimony, just that points towards the Lord and says, "Man, this is what He recently did. This is what He did in the past." I think now is the time to share it. So we would just take one person if anybody's got it. Come on, girl, you're coming up here with me though. Come on, I'm coming to you. You're coming to me. You want to sit down?
Actually, what I was trying to prevent from doing.
While you're up here.
Oh my God. Okay, so last week, I'll make it really quick. Last week, please don't. This is what I don't like. I don't like being in front of
Can everybody hear?
Yes.
Say, this makes
Okay.
you uncomfortable.
Good.
Put it aside. They're not going to be able to hear. Okay, there you go. They have to hear you. I'll hold it.
Okay. So last week, it's crazy that we're talking on testimony. I wanted to get it while Ethan said anybody want to say something, but I put my hand up and then I put it back down. And then I do it every time. And so the Lord wanted me to basically tell everybody.
Can everybody hear? You guys can hear? Okay.
The Lord usually give me like songs or like certain, please, thank you.
There he is.
He give me songs or like certain little things to like help people like in the season or wherever myself. And last week it was Mercy. And I was scared to say it out loud in front of everybody to give to him. Gigantor, I don't really know his name.
Dan.
Yes, sorry.
That's his given name.
Yes. To give to Dan. And he was basically telling everybody, like, your testimony. Ethan was talking about leveling the plane and people up here bring down here and people down here to bring up here. And it's not to just bring people low, but I think sometimes we put people on an altar and on a pedestal because we don't know their story and their testimony. And a lot of people have major testimonies, but they think that they're so low and down here that they won't come up and meet and know that we are all together. So the Lord wanted me to give Dan the song Mercy. And of course, a lot of us know it by Maverick City. But he wanted to, basically he wanted to listen to the lyrics. And you know, even myself, I still listen to the lyrics and it wrecked me so bad. Because if you only knew certain people's story, and a lot of times we think that our story is just so drowned out. I left my phone. But the devil basically, God lets us go through certain things to build character. But the enemy will keep you there to torment you so that you never get what it is that you need to get out from the past. So sometimes what goes on in the past is literally tormenting you and the new trial that you're going through to make it seem so grandiose when it's really actually not. But it's because you won't release it. So the moment that you release that and give it to somebody else, what you're going through don't even seem as heavy as you think that it is. You can kind of get through it better. But once you release it to the other person, they can kind of come out of their torment and come up. And I even thought about when you had, like you said, you train people. But then when you got to the place when you're coming for a new job, you know, you feel, you know, afraid, or you feel not afraid, but you feel like, you know, I wonder, am I going to get this and all these different things. And God was getting you through that. But had you not been obedient before and trained the people you needed to train and give the words you needed to give, he couldn't get you where you needed to go. To know I trust you enough in my own testimony that I know you're going to get me through this. And I think that we all need to do that, even myself included. You get so afraid and so tormented in what you're going through when a lot of times it's not as big as we think. If we only give the other person a testimony and the whole entire church can be elevated on the level where we need it to be, where we're not always only looking towards the Bible, prophecies and testimonies, but in your own journaling and your own stuff that you go through, just give it to somebody else. And one last thing, like I said, the Lord speaks to me a lot through songs or a specific word. Hezekiah Walker has this song, I Need You, You Need Me. We're all a part of God's body. It says, stand with me, agree with me. It is his will that every need be supplied. I won't harm you with words from my mouth. I love you. I need you to survive. And that's basically what the entire Bible is. Everybody needed somebody to survive. God wanted to make sure everybody needs was supplied, whether it's David, Job, whoever was going through whatever, the worst people we can think of that we think is the worst. We need each other. And so we need the testimony in order to survive. And that torment that we're locking ourselves down with, like the devil wants us to, because he don't want to get that testimony, to feel like you don't have other people. I'm telling you, that is the one thing that other person down there that you need to pull up to that level. They need that one thing that you're holding in because you're so focused on self. And self can be two different ways. Some people so focused on self where, like you said, they want the mic. And then you have some people so focused on self in a tormented way where we just will not unlock what it is that God is telling us to give. We keep looking and reading the same Bible stories, but somebody next to you has a story that the other person needs. Give it to them.
So yeah, absolutely. So let me show you what I see in what she just said. I see a man that shows up to church. He's probably going through a lot of stuff. I heard a little bit, and I'm talking about Gigantor. I know he was, just through talking to him, I know that he was going through a lot of stuff, right? So he hears that the Lord's seen him and what he was doing the night before when I said something. Then she goes up and goes ahead and says this, another pairing to that, right? So that's telling Dan that the Lord sees what he's doing and is pursuing Dan. Not only that, by her stepping up and giving that to Dan and her even coming up here, that's that muscle that I was talking about that we're exercising. Now, times that by how many people's in here, do you think that the anointing is just going to stay in this building? No, man, it's going to start spreading. And all the prophecies that have been spoken about this place, about this being like a hub, like this being starting a fire, I'm telling you, it's going to, when we get a hold of just I don't want to say the confidence, but it's sort of like a confidence, like a comfortableness with exercising the gifts that God gives us. I'm telling you, man, stuff's going to start shifting in here. We're going to start seeing stuff that we've never seen before, but we have to take action. So last scripture, this is me paraphrasing. You are a letter from Christ, not written with ink, but with the Spirit of the living God, not on tablets of stone, but on the human heart. So your life is a living, breathing testimony of the Lord's faithfulness, and people, including your children and all that are around us, need to hear that testimony. Yeah? Love you guys.
So good. Way to go, dude. It was awesome. Is Dan here? No, he's not. Yeah, I was just thinking, just that, like, testimonies give us common ground, so I don't want to add on to it, but it helps us see, like, oh, God worked in you, he can work in me. And sometimes, like, when Dan came up, he shared a story, it gives other people common ground to go, oh, he worked in me that way. And it's easier to approach someone like Dan and be like, hey, I just feel like the Lord's doing this. But I guess all of that to say is that don't just wait for somebody to share their story to approach them. Because sometimes we wait to hear something and then we go, oh, there's commonality here. And then you approach. But, like, actually get to know people outside of just when there's a microphone in the works. Because, like, when we're in the lobby and stuff, start to get to know people, because that's when you actually start hearing things. I can't tell you how many times people have come up for prayer and they're like, hey, I'm struggling with this. And I'm like, you know who conquered that? Amber and Scott. They conquered that. You should go talk to them. I've never dealt with that. They conquered that. You know who else dealt with that? Like, you know what I mean? And I'm starting to pick and be like, oh, these people, they had breakthrough in that. I've never had breakthrough in that, but they have. But that's the thing is, if we're not talking to each other, we don't realize we can actually lend our testimony to each other, right? So like, don't attack Dan. Don't attack Dan with, you know what I mean, where it's like, oh, you know, everybody get Dan. But it's to say that like every single person in this room, the Lord has moved and had his way in their life. And it's taking the time. And I know like we live in an introvert world now because it's easy to be in our phones, and I work remotely from home. So it's like I'm alone all the time. So it's just easy to be like, I come in, I leave. You know, and that's really like church. It's not a club, but it is a group of people that lend the testimony of God to each other. Okay. That's why we come together. It's not just to be like, let's have a good service. It's actually to spend time with each other. And that's something that I feel like I'm even getting stretched in, because it's like, I'm kind of like, let's worship the Lord and just get out of here. You know, that's like where I feel like I've been, but I'm actually really seeing like, it is about worshiping the Lord. It is about us bringing the offering to the Lord, but it's also us bringing an offering to each other. And I think that's what Brad's talking about, is taking the testimony the Lord's given you and lending it to the people around you and letting that create a testimony. So yeah, cool. Can we thank the Lord? Everybody give Brad a hand. Thank you, Brad, for just getting after that.